So today we would like to discuss the issue of innovation, and also there we did some preparatory work. Namely, we undertook a survey where actually major topics were requested where innovation could definitely contribute to a more responsible use of medicines. This is basically the results, the most important results. And the interesting thing is that most highly rated is indeed healthcare information in all aspects. And of course, secondly, new medicines, design and development. What will be the trends and to what extent will they contribute to a better and a more effective use of medicines?
At the end of the day, I think we're still living in an environment where the manufacturers, the governments, many of the developers think about the physicians and the intermediaries as their customers. And the notion of the patient as being the ultimate customer is still not there. So the medicines are developed in terms of not so much what the patient really needs and wants, not so much in terms of how the patient might or might not use them, but really in terms of what the physician might prescribe, in terms of, even in case of some of the other intermediaries, what they think might be most. The last thing I will say in terms of innovations, that we're very excited about some of the things that are happening, and when we talk about combination therapies, we mean not only just targeted therapies, but recognizing now that some of the therapies are coming with good education programs. I work with one of the companies that provides a health coaching program for their insulin products. Very important, so that patients are supported in terms of the right use of those medicines, understanding their diseases.
So there are two kinds of innovation that we're interested in. One kind is the incremental improvement that we see in an existing technology. The other kind is the leap. And there are some leaps in front of us that are going to come that are going to empower people, patients, consumers, and most of those that we're familiar with in our own lives over the last 2 decades have been the information technologies. And so we're poised for another leap. One is the leap from information technology to knowledge technologies. The other big leap is to go from information technology and knowledge technologies to another leap, which is really about what we do with our technologies, and social technologies are giving us more clues than the institutional use.
We see a lot of innovation, but it's also very important to get the medical community on board, and I see that an important parameter of innovation is very much also the scientific strength of the doctors, the treating physician. So this whole attitude of challenging conventional wisdom, I think, is very important, and that's close also to your point on it's not always the system, the regulations, or the way the molecules are moving into the innovation, but also what's between the ears and people who make decisions. Innovation in the next couple of years will be very much a smart combination between old and new, and that combination is very important to etc. Knowing there are very little incentives to embark for drug discovery at this time.
Professionals, I mean the doctors, of course the researchers, the scientists are very important. They're quite prone to use new technology and information, but a lot of the professionals, not only the doctors, nurses, other professionals in the hospitals, I mean, they really have a very, very hard time right now just delivering the healthcare. And how should they also be able to deliver innovation? And I agree totally that a lot of innovation will be how do we handle current treatments, provide them in a better way, drugs, a lot of the drugs, how can we use it in a more adherent way.
Why are we in the business? We want to innovate, and in order to improve the care for patients, whether or not that is incremental innovation or milestone innovation. The responsible use of innovations and generics is very important. So we always say use generics when possible and use innovative medicines when needed to achieve better results for patients. We would like to focus on the end results of a pharmaceutical intervention, the so-called outcomes of care. For that reason, we would like to put pharmacotherapy in a broader context of healthcare. So let us measure what innovations do in real life and pay the industry for the outcomes and not for the pills. A more important issue is that pharmacists have to make a choice. To put it quite frankly, Are they shopkeepers and traders of medicine, or will they be real? Will they take real part in the healthcare system? If the latter is the case, they must invest heavily in their relations with the doctors and vice versa, of course.
Let me start by perhaps being a little controversial and saying, to me, the biggest health gain in the world will not require innovation. 60% of cancers are preventable. Does not require innovation. Taking the consumer as a partner in healthcare delivery does not require innovation. It requires commitment and common sense. And I think sometimes we get a bit enthused with the word innovation, and we forget the fundamentals that will have the biggest impact, generally at the lowest cost. So where does idea as an innovative concept come to hit what we call in Australia, the rubber hits the road? Who pays for that innovation, and what criteria will that payer use to recognise and to recompense that innovation? What is innovation? For whom is it relevant? Who pays for it? And who benefits from it? Because unless we answer that question, we will be here someone will be here in 10 years' time talking about innovation.
One of the least innovative parts of the whole pharmaceutical arena has been clinical development. That the fundamentals of the clinical trial, double-blind, placebo-based clinical trial, came out right post-World War II. 1962 was embedded. And we now have signs of real innovation there in groups like Patients Like Me, where you have consumers who are leading this. Probably the great innovation of pharma with protease inhibitors to take a disease that was a death sentence worldwide and say, now this is manageable. And we had an innovation in how to do trials. So I contend that a lot of the resistance to innovation is actually in an industry that has still continued to do okay despite having little innovation in its processes.
The research part of our industry is really flourishing because there are a lot of things going on in research. Where the biggest hurdles are now is in the development side. And you pointed quite correctly that we have a big trouble with randomized controlled trials because they are very expensive. The added value is not that much anymore because Patients Like Me, etc., that's are now the real life situation. We are having a lot of discussion with regulatory bodies about shifting the real life situation a little bit ahead of the process and not focusing on randomized controlled trials.
How do we reward innovation, and at what stage we reward innovation, and what the responsibility, particularly of pharma, is in relationship to collecting information that can identify the outcomes of innovation. Is the health payer the rewarder of innovation? Or is it taxation? Is it something else? What are the incentives? How do you pay for innovation? If it's through a health gain, then you're locked into health technology assessment. If it's outside in some business paradigm, you have something else to do. And we've been too narrow in the debate about where, who, at what stage we pay for innovation.
And I'd like to hear the panel's response about where do they feel the role of the pharmacist is. The pharmacist is the most accessible health professional throughout the world, developed and developing countries.
Pharmacists have probably about a 4-year head start on physicians, no offense, in playing the key role. And the key role is changing behavior, and pharmacists have been making a major transformation in the profession over recent decades, and especially in the US I see it, that recognize the value proposition is no longer lick, stick, count, pour. It's really interacting, engaging with the patient so that they can more knowledgeably integrate the pharmaceutical into their whole life and their whole health.
There is absolutely no question that the role of pharmacy optimised can improve healthcare enormously. The trouble is that the models that we've got internationally are not working. We've locked ourselves into a supply mentality and not a service mentality. the funding of pharmacy is from drug supply and not service. There needs to be a changing paradigm.
The real innovation that needs to take place is in the process of care and how we work together as teams of professionals.
Well, I think that basically is quite an interesting and good outcome of these roundtables, directly or indirectly, because it addresses quite a number of issues which we have to be taken from here by the politicians, but also by us as innovators. I'll leave it at that and would thank the panel members very much for their input and contribution, and also the audience for their input and also for listening. Thank you very much.